Immigration and border control are once again at the forefront around the nation. The recent discovery of 2 dead bodies ensnared in red buoys along the Rio Grande and the DOJ suing the governor of Texas highlights the gravity of the situation. Governor Abbott installed 1,000 feet of 4-foot rotating red buoys on the Rio Grande and aims to halt illegal crossings. The buoys are part of Operation Lone Star, the governor's border control initiative launched in 2021, and to the tune of almost $4.5 billion over the last 2 years. The governor's office claims that Operation Lone Star has led to substantial results in almost 400,000 migrant apprehensions, 31,000 criminal arrests, and the seizure of 422 million lethal doses of fentanyl, enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States. Despite the claims' successes, Governor Abbott's tactics have sparked controversy and legal challenges. The White House also voiced criticism, accusing the governor of both endangering migrants and border agents, as well as undermining the Biden administration's border enforcement plan. Securing borders and addressing criminal activities are valid concerns, but we can't lose sight of the human aspect of immigration. People seeking refuge and better life endure perilous journeys, and the consequences of misguided policies can be devastating. Today we explore the intricacies of immigration on the state and federal level on America's Front Line. Welcome back to America's Front Line. I'm here with Ken Hall. Ken, thanks for coming on again.
Thank you for having me back. I'm enjoying my time here.
All right. Let's just hear, first of all, overall your thoughts on the barriers that Greg Abbott's put down at the border.
I think they're highly functional. I think they're a temporary structure. Therefore, they don't require engineering by the Army Corps of Engineers. I think that there's a lot of claims that the federal government is making, but the basic reason they're trying to come up with a reason to stop it is because it is effective. It's functionally very effective. It's probably one of the most cost-effective methodologies I've seen, and it can be put in high-volume areas so that it's not it's not an expensive process compared to putting in the fence. And since the federal government is not assisting and it's a state operation, I think that it's a brilliant choice of methodologies.
The DOJ is suing Greg Abbott. They're saying that it's conflicting with the Biden administration's initiative for their border control plan. How is it conflicting? And first of all, why would Texas need to institute their own border control initiative if Biden's plan is working?
I think you hit it on the head.
Yeah.
The federal government has chosen not to enforce federal law. Also, Texas is a part of the United States by means of a treaty, very unusual as far as the rest of the United States. The federal government is violating that treaty in the fact that it is not providing geographical protection for the borders of Texas. Therefore, if the government does not meet that criteria, then the state is entitled to protect its own boundaries. Now, it cannot reach into a neighboring state, but it certainly can protect its own borders. And if it so chose, it could secede from the United States altogether if the United States continued to breach the terms of that treaty. Now, with regards to the lawsuit, they're suing based on a part of the law that deals with water passages and navigation. That barrier is down the center of the river, allows navigation north and south by watercraft. It doesn't affect it at all. It doesn't affect the navigation at all. It affects illegal navigation across the river, but only in those high traffic areas. So I don't think the federal government has any grounds to stand on. I think they're going to be defeated hands down.
Okay, so Texas is spending their own money on this to the tune of $4.4 billion. And that's coming out of the Texas Criminal Justice Fund and going into Abbott's disaster fund. That's how they're paying for the buoys, the razor wire. Most of it's going to additional troops to secure the border. But Texas is fully funding this entire operation. So if they're funding the operation, is the Lone Star operation, is it a state right to protect its border, or is that infringing on the federal government's jurisdiction over immigration?
Well, it's somewhat duplicitous. The federal government has an obligation to protect the United States on its international borders. The state of Texas has a right to protect its borders within its state boundaries. Now, think about, number one, Abbott's favorability reviews right now. It's very high. Why? Because the money he's spending offsets something negative. Otherwise, he wouldn't spend the money. So what that tells you is the negative impact of the illegal border crossings that the Biden administration has chosen to facilitate has so negatively affected the state of Texas that it's worth spending that money to protect itself. There's a return on an investment in the fact that they're reducing the damage that would otherwise occur. So, yes, the state is obligated to protect its citizens, even if the federal government chooses not to.
But where's the overlap with this lawsuit? At some point, there's an overlap. You can't have two sets of policies. At some point, they're going to...
No, you can.
But they're going to collide at some point, right? The federal government's...
They shouldn't.
Like, which one overrides which?
They're designed to do the same thing. The federal government is obligated to enforce the laws of the United States. It's choosing not to. Therefore, Texas may, at its discretion, enforce its borders. Those two borders lie on top of each other. So you have two separate jurisdictions. Prior to this policy, there were lots of events where cartels were impacting U.S. citizens out on the lake, on the Rio Grande. And guess who was the law enforcement agency dealing with that? Texas, not Border Patrol. Okay? So, again, it's continuing that law enforcement functionality. It's still protecting its borders from the import of illegal drugs. You can't say it's not intended to. It's still protecting itself from potential terrorist events coming in across the border. It's just a multitude. It's a law enforcement practice. So they have absolutely the right and their overlapping responsibilities for enforcing the law. They just have that availability. Now, they shouldn't have to. And I love the lawsuit that the Attorney General filed, because it's going to give the state of Texas the right for discovery. It's going to give the state of Texas the right to countersue for those expenses. I don't know if they'll do it, but that it nevertheless does give them that right. It's a lawsuit. So who knows what they'll find out, why these policies are in place, who's being ordered to do what, why they're not enforcing the laws as they exist. They haven't changed the law. They've only chosen which ones they wish to enforce and which ones they don't.
Governor Abbott was shipping immigrants up to Washington. Was that a poke, or was it something else?
Governor Abbott is not naive when it comes to politics. Okay? For the first time, he forced the current media that is obviously left-leaning to address the immigration issue, illegal immigration issue. And then he sent it to places that were influencing the federal government's decision-making process and saying, oh, but we are a sanctuary entity, whether it be a city or a state, whatever. And he said, perfect. Let me assist you in your endeavor. And much like our country is suffering right now from Cloward and Piven's planning to use our freedoms against us, Governor Abbott is simply taking their own words and saying, back them up, because we can't afford to. So I think it's both. I think he's forcing the media to cover the situation. I think he's forcing the state and federal and city governments that claim they are sanctuary states to face the reality of what it costs to be a sanctuary state. And I see the tide turning. More and more we have left-leaning mayors and such saying this can't be sustained. Why aren't we protecting the border? So I think he's very effective. I think he's a brilliant strategist.
Well, there's no doubt what he's doing is effective because Texas's numbers are far lower than Arizona and California's at the border right now. I think this entire lawsuit and what I've learned about it so far doesn't really look good for the efficacy of Biden's administration's border control plan. Either their plan's not working or Washington's just oblivious to the severity of what's happening at the borders right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of games being played from the federal government side of view. Their point of view. They're trying to highlight deaths on the river. They're trying to highlight and downplay the deaths that occur after crossing deserts with no water and people being abandoned in the heat. And of course, you find these articles about bodies floating in the river. Well, they are a direct impact, but they're not caught. They happened somewhere else. It's just that the barriers happen to be a resting point at which they didn't flow downstream anymore.
This is from the U.S. Department of Justice to the Honorable Greg Abbott. This is a notice of prospective filing of legal action regarding unlawful activities in the Rio Grande River. Dear Governor Abbott and Attorney General Colmenero, we write to inform you, pursuant to the Justice Manual 1-10.100, that the United States intends to file legal action in relation to the state of Texas' unlawful construction of a floating barrier in the Rio Grande River. The state of Texas actions violate federal law, raise humanitarian concerns, present serious risks to public safety and the environment, and may interfere with the federal government's ability to carry out its official duties. On or before July 12, 2023, and continuing to the present, Texas and its agents placed a floating barrier in the Rio Grande River near the Camino Real International Bridge, Eagle Pass, Texas. The floating barrier violates Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act 33 U.S.C. 403, which prohibits the creation of any obstruction to the navigable capacity of waters of the United States, and further prohibits building any structure in such waters without authorization from the United States Army Corps of Engineers. According to a Department of the Army, the floating barrier at issue here is a structure that obstructs the navigable capacity of the Rio Grande River, which is a navigable water of the United States within the meaning of the Rivers and Harbors Act. Texas does not have authorization from the Corps to install the floating barrier and did not seek such authorization before doing so. Texas unauthorized construction of the floating barrier is violation of the Rivers and Harbors Act. The floating barrier poses a risk to navigation as well as public safety in the Rio Grande River, and it presents humanitarian concerns. Thus, we intend to seek appropriate legal remedies, which may include seeking injunctive relief requiring the removal of obstructions or other structures in the Rio Grande River. There's a little bit more here. I'll post it in the on the website. But I wanna read you guys Governor Abbott's reply. So he responded to this in a series of tweets saying, the tragic humanitarian crisis on the border was created because of Biden's refusal to secure the border. His open border policies encourage migrants to risk their lives crossing illegally through the Rio Grande instead of safely and legally over a bridge. Texas is stepping up to address the crisis. We will continue to deploy every strategy to protect Texans and Americans and the migrants risking their lives. In his last tweet, he said, "We will see you in court, Mr. President." There's no backing down. At this point, he's gonna take it to court. He's gonna fight it. I'm interested to see what happens.
Interestingly enough, recently on most of the news stations, when they were talking about the barriers being installed and the bodies and the whole bit, there's a photograph of one of the boats. I'm not sure if it was from the Mexican side or from the U.S. side. It was pacing up and down and around the barrier, looking to assist in any way it could, navigating, if you will, upstream and downstream and around the barrier. So by definition, doesn't that make it navigable? It's not obstructing navigation. I think they're going to have a hard time. So. Now, also states are authorized, as they are down in the lake in the lower portion down there by Brownville, they are authorized to put buoys and notices of hazard. A buoy that notifies people of a hazard. That buoy is doing that same job. It's notifying people it's a hazard to cross here. Don't do it. I don't think the federal government has a chance. I think they pulled this one out and are trying to twist it to make it fit. I am no lawyer, but if I were, I would bet on Abbott.
Let's bring on George Chavez. What do you say?
I think that's a great idea.
George. Hi, George.
Hey, gents. How y'all doing today?
Doing great. Doing great. So you've heard some of this conversation?
I have. I've heard some of y'all speak, the talk. And, you know, as always, I would just say this. I know that a little bit of this discussion was prompted by the discovery of two bodies in the river, two human beings who died. And so, first of all, like I always say about this issue, let's never forget that it's a humanitarian issue. No matter what they were doing at the time. I mean, I was in law enforcement for many, many years. And no matter when somebody passed away, whether they were the suspect or the victim, it was always tragic to me. That's the way I always felt about it. So I never want to let anyone forget that two people, two of God's children, died. So it's let's always remember that. It was not a good incident, not a good situation, and prayers go out to them and to their family. So that's what I want to start with. But go ahead. What, you got a question for me?
Well, so being in the state of Texas.
No, sir. Great state of Texas.
The great state, I'm sorry. The great state of Texas.
Thank you very much.
Being a Texas patriot.
Yes, sir.
What role should the state's government play in immigration enforcement?
Well, you know, I know that Ken Hall touched on it. You know, Texas is very, very unique. We were once our own nation, and there was that treaty that we have, and we are the only state in the union that has the right to secede. I don't want to beat a dead horse. Ken covered a lot of it. I hopefully we get another attorney on here who has much more knowledge than I do to talk about what rights we have. We do have a right to defend our own border, and that's what this is. I mean, the federal border, the state border, they lay right on top of each other. And in many instances, the state of Texas has a right to protect its own border. I will say that if you look at what happened here, and I know this is very big in the media about this buoy system, which you touched on it, this is not a 1,000-yard buoy. It's 1,000 feet. So we're talking about what, 3 football fields, right? Around that?
Yep.
And so it really isn't taking up the whole river. And what I have noticed already since this story broke, and I'm just, it irks me to no end, because I will tell you that I do care about every life on this planet. I really, really do. And how many people have drowned previously in that river? How many people have died in the deserts? How many people have died in the backs of trucks, left out in the hot Texas sun, that have passed away? And yet we hear nothing. You hear nothing. But now here comes an opportunity, right? Never let a tragedy go unused, right, in the media. And now we're talking about how horrible this buoy was, when really we don't know if they drowned there or if they drowned elsewhere and got caught up in the undernetting of this buoy. Regardless, it's a horrible situation. But as far as Texas goes, I invite everyone. It's not forbidden. It's not like you can't travel down there. Come on down and go take a look, right? Before you start speaking about how bad it is or how bad it isn't. There are many states throughout the union now that want to declare a state of emergency in their own state. The mayors and the governors of their own state want to declare a state of emergency. They're hundreds of miles away from the border. We're right there. And we're taking on this huge influx of just people, humanity, that are looking for somewhere to go. I guess everyone can have their opinion on what these buoys do. I will tell you this, and I like to use my own analogies in police work or how I've worked in my job. I like to think of this as basically a crowd control issue. If you think about any big event and where you've had a barrier or a barricade, which kind of tells people where to go, there are points of entry. There are proper points of entry that people can go to, and they know it. They just choose not to use it. I look at this huge buoy system almost like a bit of a barricade, because it doesn't stop that. They can go around it. You've seen the video if you've taken a look long enough. Don't look at the snapshot. There's video. People can go around this thing. But what they're trying to tell you is don't come here. Don't come here illegally. Go through a proper point of entry. Come in legally so you can be processed. And for people to say, oh, they don't understand, that's very insulting. Why wouldn't they understand? They completely understand that this is coming across through not proper channels, illegally, whatever verbiage you want to use, and they can go around it and go to the proper point of entry. I am not 100%, hopefully everybody understands this, I am not against immigration whatsoever. I believe this country was built on the backs of immigrants. Please come pursue the American dream. Just do it legally. Proper legal immigration, I'm all behind. But this administration that is doing this, is telling people just to keep coming, basically is what they're saying. People are dying out there in the deserts, in the river, being trafficked, being put in boxcars. And that's a real tragedy. How many people out there are being trafficked and died? Listen, I'll state something that someone once told me, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but I will put that back on them. This is somebody I have a great respect for. And they once said that all the COVID deaths that happened should be put firmly on the shoulders of Donald Trump, President Trump. And I thought about that and said, well, that's a way to think about it. Well, if you still think that way, if that's the way you believe, let's look at what this administration has done or not done to stop the flow of humanity that keeps coming over, that keeps crossing the desert, keeps crossing the river, and dying in droves. And you've done nothing to stop it, let alone really you're asking them to come over. Then maybe all these deaths might be on someone else's shoulders as well. If we truly care, let's think of a solution. And I've said this on another podcast. I say this time and time again. If we truly and really do care, just keep coming and keep coming over and putting your life in peril. That's not a good solution either. I guess I'm just tired of the selective outrage that we have, really selective here. People are dying in circumstances coming over, and yet I hear all this outrage about these two bodies who may or may not have died at that location, that may have just got stuck in the netting at that location, and yet everyone is so upset. I do have some people, and I got to be very, very careful because I never want to get them in trouble, whether they're friends or family that work at the border. And I can tell you that they are overwhelmed. These Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed. Right now, I'm in a South Texas facility there in Texas. I won't say where. We have people from all over. We have 6 Russian nationals, one of which was caught with $600,000 in Mexico. You think he's coming over here for a better opportunity? You think he's coming over here to be a productive member of our society? What is a Russian national doing caught in Mexico with $600,000 with 5 other of his cohorts? What are they doing here? We have also an Iraqi in a South detection facility that is on a terrorist watch list right now. This isn't a hypothetical. It is real. I was in communication with these people this week. I got to be very careful. I don't want them to get in trouble in any way. But these are things that should be very disconcerting, very on the minds of Americans. And like I said, when you start to see on CNN and CNBC mayors and governors in, I guess, blue-leaning cities that are asking for a state of emergency, this is a bigger problem than people realize. It is a huge humanitarian issue, and we really need to get our grips around it. When it goes on for this long, all I can say is, I wonder who's benefiting, right? In Latin, it's cui bono. Who is benefiting from all these people coming over, because I'm telling you, there doesn't seem to be an effort. Anything that I can see, anything that my friends and family down the border can see, anyone that can see at the state level, and I don't want to dime anybody out, but even in the federal level, it doesn't seem there to be an effort to stop the flow of illegal immigrants. And if it has, I'm ready. Show me where the effort is to slow this pace down. And so when you don't see that, there may be a benefit somewhere that we're not seeing. I don't know.
So let me ask you another. No, that was great. Let me ask you another question, George. Where do you think Governor Abbott's going to land on this on the DOJ?
I think if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, I think that's what may have to happen. You got to remember, and I wish we had an attorney on here to explain more. Do your own research about Texas. If anybody outside of Texas is listening to this, you have to remember at one time we were our own nation, and we entered into a treaty that had a certain couple of guidelines that you took care of us, you protected us, and I think he's going to do very, very well, because we have the right to protect our own state border and protect the rights of our citizens. I don't feel like this buoy is in any way hindering a navigable waterway. Because there are boats in and out there all the time. And you're talking roughly 3 football fields where this buoy system is located. And it's really not a full deterrent that runs the whole length of the river. I think that's what people are misunderstand. The people are going around it on a lot of occasions. So this is not something that's detrimental to human life. It is simply the way I see it, in my opinion, again. And you know how I always say this, gents. It's only in my opinion. It doesn't mean it's an absolute. I think this is very similar to me telling somebody, go to the proper point of entry. Don't come here.
George.
And I do think that he's going to do well. Yes.
I am a partial citizen of Texas, I would say. And also law enforcement point of view. What would you say the impact of unrestricted migration through Texas, the accompanying crime, the accompanying cost of feeding and housing people, the accompanying cost of life from fentanyl, all those expenses that the state puts out, how would you explain that impact on the Texans and is it something that we can ignore? Is it, I'm trying to point out the cost of doing this business.
Sure, the cost of it. Well, let's look at it, right? When they were coming in, right, we all had, I'll go back even a little bit of a room deeper to COVID. Did they have to take the COVID vaccination? No. Are we letting people in here with tuberculosis and TB? Yes. Is there a little bit of a criminal element that comes through this border? Absolutely. Logistically, what we're putting on our fire, police, EMTs, our hospital is overwhelming. And when you have states just outside of Texas that are complaining, look at what our brothers and sisters down there in South Texas are having to go through. So when you are paying attention to cities and jails that are just telling you we're overrun, neighborhoods, it is truly, the cost of this is just enormous. And it's coming out of Texas pockets right now. So to say that I don't feel like it's being covered enough. I don't think it's being talked about enough. I don't think people realize what's going on down there. And I think the reason people are able to elsewhere to speak and say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or there are people we care about and we have so much compassion. Wait till it ends up on your doorstep. Wait until this large amount of drugs, fentanyl, ends up in your high school and your child is overdosing on drugs that came over from the border. Wait until some, God forbid, you get touched by the criminal element that came over right through the border. And I think that people say things that I always use this little bit of analogy. Everybody hates the police until they need one. Nobody really is addressing this issue who hasn't been touched by it. Until it does, I think you might have a different perspective. Financially, it is an incredible burden. You talk about if you have one criminal come into your little area, that can create a huge issue. Now you're talking about 20, 50, 100, 200 people that just immediately get dumped into a community. That creates a huge issue, a huge problem. They need medical. They need the police. They need fire. They need all these logistical things that take up resources away from people that are American citizens that have lived here, and they don't have any way to get them. We are being overrun, and the numbers, they're real, and that's all I can say to people. The numbers are real.
Would you say? Would you say that the impact that this is creating is changing the political landscape of southern Texas? It seems that there's a lot more, Hispanic female for sure, but a lot more Hispanic people are seeing the changes that have occurred as a result of this administration's policies, and it seems that there's a major transition over to a more conservative, outlook or political point of view, in the fact that they get back to, we need law enforcement, we need to enforce our laws. Do you think that's a direct impact of the migration policy, or is that just crime in general?
Yeah, well, I think it's right. Two things can be true at once, right? So I think it is both. I think that we are seeing a rise in crime, and that's causing people to, hey, man, we need to get a hold of the situation. But yes, to your point, what's happening down at the border, and there have been some recent elections that show, hey, when you have areas of congressional districts that have been Democratic or for the Democratic Party for decades upon decades, and then they've recently flipped over to Republicans or more of a conservative viewpoint, you can see that. I think that we're going to be feeling this for a while. And, listen, a lot of my family are Democrats, but they see the problem. Well, I call them Texas Democrats, right? I think that if you put a Texas Democrat and maybe a Northeast Democrat in the room, that you'd see the difference. Texas Democrats tend to be a little more conservative, but I think we've reached a breaking point. You just cannot have an open border in any way, shape, or form. And I've said it before, if you're coming here, or if you're thinking that everyone's coming here seeking political or religious asylum, yeah, that is one thing. But when we're having people saying, well, they don't have any money where they're from, or they're poor, that's not a reason to come over and seek asylum, Anyway, we can go on and on. I mean, it's a very large onion to peel. To answer your question, Ken, yes, I think that's an aspect of it. Yes, that's a reason why I think that Hispanic people of color are tending to kind of open their eyes a little bit to see what's going on. And this is not correct. It's not good. And when you have Democratic mayors, Democratic governors who are asking, where is the Biden administration? Really, if there's something being done, man, I can't wait to hear about it, because I just haven't.
And I'd like to touch on one thing you brought up there. You were talking about people seeking asylum. Well, international law requires them to check in and seek that asylum with the next state they can get into, where they can. I don't think any of these people are coming from Mexico, or at least a very small percentage. And if they were, I can't imagine they would qualify. So I think I think that needs to be removed from the table as a discussion, is because I don't think any of these people have sought asylum in the next neighboring country. So, just my opinion, but
yeah, no, it's right, and I do understand that, and from people that I have down there at the border, that's what they're saying, and that's another key point. They said, I think it would shock the senses, shock people to realize where these people are coming from. They are traversing not one country, 5 to 6 countries just to get here. They could ask for asylum in any one of those countries, and they're not. Yet, for some reason, America's supposed to take on this burden. Look, guys, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I love this country. This has been going on not for 6 months, not for a year. It's been going on for a bit. And since this administration happened, there has been so many individuals. I don't even want to give a number. I want you, the individual listening, to go and research and find out how many people that the Border Patrol has contacted over the past 2 years. How many people are coming across this border? And there seems to be no end in sight, and no one's doing anything. And I'll say it again, why? Why is that happening? Is somebody somehow benefiting from this mass of humanity coming over? And I don't know.
I think that's something we need to dig more into. Maybe we need to follow the money.
That would be an amazing thing to do, and also find out why the people making that journey are so ill-informed as to the risks and the possibilities. I think they're being given propaganda and encouraged to do so. And again, who benefits? I agree with George 100%.
Well,
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it, I mean, it's pretty clear that George is going to keep his balls in the water,
And paddle.
right? As well as Governor Abbott, and
Yes.
I'm interested to see what's going to happen with this with the legal filing, the legal action. We'll keep researching. I think, George, that's a great point. If we can find out who's benefiting from this influx of migrants coming across the borders, maybe we can figure out why nobody's doing anything about it, or trying to find the right solution to do this. I'm also interested to see whether Arizona and California follow suit once we start seeing some statistics, which I think this case is going to bring out. I think we're going to end up seeing some hard statistics on border crossings, on criminals, on drugs, human trafficking.
That's the advantage of discovery. But
right.
remember, Texas has a unique situation based on the treaty. And I also think, as far as who's benefiting, it's interesting, because if you look at it, there's political agendas being met. You have profitability by the cartels. You have profitability by China. You have terrorist organizations that benefit. How wide does it go, and how much actual interface is there between those organizations? It makes you wonder.
It does make you wonder. Well, thanks for coming on, George. We appreciate hearing from you again.
Thank you, brother.
You guys are welcome.
I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, most definitely. Oh, guys, 2 quick points, if I may.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say this, right? You talked about how it negatively impacts Texas. Austin PD, Austin Police Department, was so down on officers, they started using DPS troopers. I don't know how many. I think at least 150 DPS troopers were assigned to Austin PD to make calls. That in and of itself should be alarming, right? Austinites, whatever, I think that's what they're called in Austin, should be very alarmed that you had to call in the state police to backfill your police department. Well, when the Lone Star Initiative happened, all of those officers were pulled off away from Austin and put down at the border. So now there's 150 less law enforcement officers that are helping the citizens of Austin, and now they're down there in the border. So there's a problem as well. And I guess what I was a little bit I was trying to allude to, and Ken kind of reminded me, I think it's maybe not as sinister as what people think, as far as like who's benefiting, cartels and whatnot, or some evil entity. There was an article, and I'm sorry, forgive me for it's been a while since I read it, but that talked about how not our workforce, but laborers, our labor force was so vastly diminished over the last 15 years or so, maybe, and then I start looking at this border issue and how many people are coming over. I don't know the numbers. I don't know that we're getting degreed people with masters or PhDs coming over in the masses. I don't know that. I don't believe that. It seems as though we're getting a lot of more people who are maybe capable of being laborers in this country. And I don't know if one is the other, but it just struck me that I remember this article talking about our labor force, not workforce, but laborers, people who are actually out there with shovels, pickaxes, roofers, whatnot, that our labor force is way down. And it just seems, here we go with the borders now. I don't know. And, that's just an opinion. It doesn't mean it's fact. I look at everybody else out there. Do your homework, read, listen. And I'm not sure if that's an issue. But I just want to point out those 2 quick ones. That's it.
Well, George, those are both great points. And we're definitely going to keep doing our homework and keep investigating. Hopefully bring you guys some more information on this topic. Ken,
Absolutely.
Do you have anything to add?
Oh, I could go on this subject for weeks, but I want to thank you, George, for coming on and giving us your point of view. You're really at the point of impact, and appreciate your thoughts and also your concern for mankind in general. I think that shows who you are. I think that you're going to see this play out in the media, and I think there's going to be a war, because much like the Trump issues at the moment, I think one side's going to have access to information it wouldn't otherwise have, And I think the media is going to try to filter it. And it's going to be up to people that do what we do, or select media groups, to get that information out as to what they have discovered, as to what that information is and who's behind some of this. It's just, we're at the beginning of a lightning storm, and people are desperate to make their sides work, which people aren't willing to try to win people over anymore. They kind of want to force it through the keyhole.
That's one thing we can make that promise, is that we'll bring as much of the unfiltered information that we can gather to you guys. That's kind of why we're here. That's kind of why we started America's Frontline, is to give a non-biased, not that we don't have our own opinions about things, and we'll certainly tell you, but to give you the information unbiased. When we get a report, we'll read it to you, we'll print it out, we'll put it on the website. Any information we get, you'll know where it comes from, and you'll know that you can trust it. And if we're ever wrong, which I'm sure at some point we will be, let us know. We'll look into it more, and we're not afraid to say, hey, sometimes we make mistakes, or sometimes information changes, or we'll do the best we can to get you the truth, and the whole truth. So Ken, thanks again.
Thank you for having me once again. I'm enjoying myself. I think that the audience that you're building here will be the most informed audience, and probably the best citizenry that we could expect, because an informed citizenry is an effective citizenry.
That's what we're trying to do. Thanks for watching again. Will we ever find humanitarian national security balance? I don't know. What I do know is that we're going to keep an open dialogue on that subject, and extend an open invitation to any of our legislators who think they may have a solution. Come on the show. Tell us about it, and we'll put you on. One takeaway from today that I think is important, it kind of lived between the lines. Both George and Ken brought it up a little bit, about how much negativity about the current state of America that there is in the media on a daily basis. There's still thousands of people from other countries that have weighed the pros and cons and still choose to make the death-defying journey to our country for a shot at a better life. So that's something to think about. Thanks for watching. Share this video, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when the next episode's coming out, and we'll see you next time.